how it's made. Horse-drawn carriages, craftsmanship that's not changed for centuries. Artificial eyes, artistic perfection, revolutionising lives. Dog and cat food, no more gagging at feeding time. And mirrors, where image is everything. But first, nothing takes you back to the past quite like a ride in a horse-drawn carriage. A timeless vehicle in both appearance and construction. Building one even today still requires the expertise of several traditional craftspeople, from ironworkers to wheelwrights. The carriage's turning mechanism is a fifth wheel that's positioned horizontally above the two front wheels. Workers weld the fifth wheel to the carriage's steel frame, then weld the boarding steps to the frame and install the driver's seat, which will be soldered into place. Once the frame is complete, it goes through an acid wash to remove any residue. Then the soldered joints are buffed to smooth out their surface. The carriage has drum brakes. Workers install them onto the axle, then assemble the steel springs that make up the suspension, and bolt them onto the axle as well. Next, they connect the brake line. They install the whole assembly under the carriage's frame. Keeping with tradition, the wheels are made out of wood. Metal isn't flexible enough to withstand the bumps in the road. Ash is used because it's a very hard wood that also doesn't rot easily. Workers position 16 spokes around a steel hub. They clamp the spokes in place, compressing them against the hub. Then they secure them with nuts and bolts. Next, they mark the spokes in two places. The first line shows how long to cut each spoke. The second line, how far to dowel the end. To form the dowel, they first shape the end into a cone, then the cone into a dowel. The doweled spokes will fit into corresponding holes they now drill in two semicircular strips of wood. The strips form what's called the felloe, the round part of the wheel. Workers tighten the hub, then press a steel band called a channel against the felloe. They cut the channel to size, then solder the ends together. Then the joint is buffed to a smooth finish. Next, they'll drill 8 holes through the channel, then using a tapering tool, thread the holes to fit the bolts that bind the channel to the felloe. Finally, the bolts are tightened with a special gun. The tyres are made of rubber. They use steel wires to hold them in place over the wheel. Workers grease the channel of the now painted wheel so that the tyre will slip on easily. They then mount the wheel on the automated tyre installation machine, which pulls on the wires, installing the tyre tightly over the wheel. The wire ends are welded together using bronze solder, this time for a stronger joint. The wheel is then banged on the ground 4 or 5 times until the distance between the tyre ends closes, covering the welded wires inside. A tap of the hammer, followed by a final bang, ensures the tyre joint is secure. Now they can mount the wheels onto the axles and install the axles under the body of the carriage. After testing the 5th wheel and the brakes, it's time to apply the finishing artistic touches. All they need now is a little horsepower. The ancient Romans and Egyptians fashioned artificial eyes out of painted clay. By the 1500s, Europeans started making them out of enamelled gold, and soon out of glass, which remained the norm for hundreds of years. Today, most artificial eyes are made of acrylic. If you've lost an eye in an accident or to a disease, a specialist known as an ocularist can fit you with an artificial eye. You can get a ready-made model or a custom-made prosthesis like this one for which this patient's being fitted. No two people's eye sockets are the same, so the first step is to take an impression. After inserting an impression tray, they inject a material called alginate, filling the entire socket cavity. After 90 seconds, the alginate sets and they can remove the hardened impression. They place the impression in a mould and pour in a type of plaster. When the plaster has hardened, they remove the impression tray and then the impression itself. What's left in the mould is a plaster replica of the socket. Now they put a wad of acrylic plastic dough into the mould.